My name is Michael Dada, so from Federal University of Technology, Mina. So, and I will be talking about machine learning applications. All right. So, yeah. Now, machine learning have been defined as a process in which is system improves performance from experience. So it learns like we do. So, and according to Tom Michel, so these algorithms are done by improving something like a function like P using a task T with an experience E. So we note that a well-defined model will now be defined by these three functions. So these three functions cannot be like a point of contact when it comes to learning some of these processes. So now, what we mean is in traditional programming, we have data, we have a code or a program, then we pass this through a computer. So then we end up having like an output. So, but in machine learning, so our computer program takes the data and try to generate a model to learn trends in the data. So when you learn the trends in the data, it cannot generate specific output. So the output could be defined, it could be undefined, depending on the type of machine learning that we are doing. So in most cases, we always call machine learning that is related to artificial neural networks. The essence of this is because the way our brain works is that in our brain, we have what we call synapses and neurons. So these neurons, they are like sensors that takes information from different parts of our body. So they pass it to the brain. I mean, they pass it to the brain. It processes the brain and it interprets it that, okay, you should do something. For example, if our finger is close to fire, all right, so we have what we call like heat sensors or and pain sensors in different parts of our body. So when these sensors feel that you are in danger, maybe due to heat, due to pain, some other things, so they send like a communication to the brain, and an immediate output is taken in order for us to do to make a decision. It's either we run away, we pull away our hands, or we try to keep ourselves safe. So the way our brain works is what we are trying to mimic when it comes to machine learning. So we want to, so instead of us, okay, we have sensors, so we have our own artificial sensors. We have our artificial processing unit that processes this information based on some preconceived outputs. All right, so these are some of the developments, historical development of machine learning since 1950s. We have the Samuel checker player. So this is the basis of some of us must have heard of AI chess player. So, and we have seen on several occasions where this artificial intelligence chess player defeated human players. So now we are getting to a point where, as we are developing when it comes to machine learning, we are also in danger one way or another. But one way of developing in terms of research is to overcome some of these dangers. So we hope we can overcome the dangers that machine learning and artificial intelligence could pose, so that the benefit could outweigh the disadvantages. So these are later developments, so up to the 1990s. So when we have data mining, so this is the point at which machine learning now started becoming something very prominent. So data mining, adaptive software agent, and web applications. So we have text learning. Some of us, we are using we are using Apple products or Apple phone. So we have a lot of app on our phone that could you can scan like a portion of a text, and it could convert it to something that's like typed for you. So these apps that we have on our phone are actually operating on the principle of machine learning. So we have reinforcement learning, so inductive logic programming, assembles, and base net learning. So now in recent time, we have moved from this early development, which are based mostly on statistical methods. So I'd like to make it very clear that most of the machine learning methods we use, can you see me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can
All
hear
right,
you.
thank you. All right, thank you. So we have statistical related learning, transfer learning, sequence learning. So some of these are products from different fields of research. So they basically started as statistical methods. So, but other fields have taken up this method, and we are making new development and advancement to these very areas of machine learning. So now, for example, yes, we have machine learning algorithms that could recognize patterns, facial identities, or facial expressions when we are happy, when we are sad. We have algorithms that could recognize handwritten or spoken words. Then when it comes to medical images, we have what we call generative patterns, generating images of motion sequences. All right, so now we have ways in which now, in recent time, a researcher just developed like a medical image method that is from PET images that could be used in children. So I will see that because the doses that could give a very high contrast images are dangerous to children. So we needed like AI generated images that could convert low dose images to high dose images. So we see that some of these algorithms are playing serious roles in improving medical delivery. So we have, when it comes to prediction, future stock prices have been predicted. So some of us must have seen some of these things when we are listening to the news. They talk about stock, okay, that it's expected that stock will rise tomorrow, it will rise next tomorrow. The ways they are able to make this prediction is because most of them are using artificial neural networks and machine learning. So and we see that some other cases we have from the case of rainfall too. So that's weather prediction. So some of these things are based on data analysis and use of machine learning algorithms. So we have other applications of machine learning such as web search. So which we see that if you notice in your Gmail, when you are sending email, you notice that you get to a point that before you even type your message, you will be seeing suggestions. So there's an AI algorithm associated with your Gmail that is also reading your email already. So it's already reading your email and trying to suggest what you are going to say next. So Google that we are using is also learning about each one of us. All right. So I won't say more than that. So finance, we have in finance, we have in cryptography. So when we want to send encrypted messages, so we needed to encode some of these messages in such a way that it's only the person that is intended recipient that will be able to read the message. So we have the use of machine learning, e-commerce, space exploration, robotics, information extraction, and data mining. So we also have in social network analysis and social engineering. So we see that the behavior of humans can also be predicted using this algorithm. So they use it for debugging and any other problem that we may have. So any problem at all, we can apply machine learning to automate, to optimize, and to get a better result. All right, so these are state-of-the-art application of machine learning. So we must have heard of self-driving cars. All right, so these are self-driving cars, so there's nobody inside. So these cars already knows your way, they know the road, they know traffic rules. So all these things are be programmed into the algorithm for them to work automatically. So in terms of security as well, we have. All right. So in terms of security as well, we have heard of cases in which we have missiles that are sent, maybe because there's a terrorist zone, they send those missiles there. So now, in new development, we now have missiles that are programmed to even wait for traffic light. they travel, but they don't explode until they get to their intended target. So these things are possible because of state-of-the-art methods in machine learning. So we have what we call deep belief net on face images. So you have ways in which we can recognize images. So I know some of us, we have been to Nakoitin Hotel and some of these world-class hotels. So immediately we get to the entrance, we notice that the door opens on its own. So, and once you go in, it closes by itself. So, if you look on top of these doors, we see that there's what we call like a face sensor. So, when it senses your face, it automatically opens on their own. So, majority of these doors are actually programmed with digital electronics method. So, but in recent time, we are now having very powerful doors like this that operate on the principles of machine learning. So we can program them in such a way that only certain people can be allowed to enter the building for security reasons. So these are the advantages that machine learning is giving to us. We have scene labeling via deep learning. So we can actually so we have a lot of governments in the developed countries that are already even building like a trust index on their citizens. So you look at the citizens, you see how law-abiding the citizens are, then you can build a trust index on that particular citizen. The same thing you can do with cars that moves on the road. So we can actually find ways in which we can recognize these patterns in the cars we have. So we have some other works in which the emission, like carbon emission from each of these vehicles, are being monitored using machine learning algorithms. All right, so now we have machine learning in speech recognition and synthesis. Now we have machine learning can be used to recognize speech. So we can, for example, like if I want to do security in a lab, so based on the kind of research we're doing, so, okay, only few people are allowed to have access to this area. So we can actually use like voice recognition to monitor the number of people that are allowed to come into the lab. So now, but in recent time, as we are having the advancement, we have what we call synthesis as well. All right, so now, for example, we have a lot of apps on our TikTok in which you can just change one of few things and your voice changes. A woman can talk like a man can talk like a woman. So these are machine learning algorithms that are based on what we call generative adversarial networks. So what they do is that they learn your speech and they try to synthesize it in another form. So these are some of the things that are done with machine learning. So now we're now going into the state-of-art medical applications of machine learning. So now I'll mention just few because of our time. So we have what we call medical image segmentation. We notice that this is really, when it comes to image segmentation, is a very, very important section when it comes to medical image analysis. In those days, we used to draw contours, we used to do things manually, so it takes time. But now we have machines, apps that can even draw this contour for us, recognize the contour, interpret the contour. And we even have some of them that are coming with the new Siemens machine in which they can actually predict images, because some of these machines are now being infused with machine learning algorithms to make our image experience much better. All right, so we have what we call medical image denoising. For example, we can take the case of medical imaging in Nigeria. So majority of us, we have like MRI scanners that operate at low magnetic fields. So machines that operate at low magnetic field are prone to noise. So could have like Gaussian noise or Richian noise. So some of this noise could make it difficult for us to interpret different features on the scan. So we can now use machine learning algorithm to actually remove this noise directly, so that we'll be left with only the features that are expected on the scans. All right, so we have what we call medical image super resolution. Actually, when we talk about the noising, it looks as if it's almost the same with, but it's not. With super resolution. Super resolution is like, okay, we can have resolution. Now we can make it improve the contrast, pick the important images and try to see how we can bring them out. So in such a way that we can see these features much better. All right, so now we have real-time medical image analysis. I know some of us must have seen something like this in different movies. So they are no longer in the movies, but they are happening real life. So you can have this like your scanner is incorporated into the entire building. So you have screens everywhere. You can see your image very well. You can transfer your image. So some of these things that are like fiction in our movies are now happening live. Okay, for example, I can bring an example for us. I know some of us are fans of Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise film. So, and we see in this film, we see that you can change your face to somebody else's face when you are a spy. So we see that there's something that they used to put like a speech synthesizer on the neck here. So, and they have to read a message like a text, maybe for like 10 seconds. So these are basically generative adversarial networks that have been, even in our movies, for so many years before some of us get to know what machine learning is all about. So this thing has been in play for long, but now it's like some of the people that pay for this research are now ready to put it out in the public. So we have to take advantage of that opportunity. So what are the types of machine learning that we have? So we have what we call supervised learning. So in supervised learning, you have like a pair of input and output data. So like one input is mapped to an output. So you have a desired output, so you can learn how the trends happen. So in unsupervised learning, you are only given data, so you don't have output. So there actually is a limit to which things you can do when you talk about unsupervised learning. So because majority of what you can do with unsupervised learning is what we call data mining. So you want to mine the data, you want to look for hidden features in the data. Then you have semi-supervised learning, so in which you have training data plus a few desired output. Now in reinforcement learning, rewards for sequence actions. I know some of us may not have known, but I know in the early and late 90s, some of us may remember a game that we used to sneak out to play with our feeding money. We call it Mario. So you go to one corner and go and play Mario. So Mario is actually based on the olden days reinforcement learning. So when it comes to reward, so reward and sequence action. So when you reward an agent, the agent perform a certain action. So when this is now being implemented fully in the medical environment. So how is it implemented? So you can actually program like a nanorobot now. You can program like a responsive drug that could go based on reward action. So you can do reinforcement learning to actually attack different types of tumor cells. Now, for supervised learning, we have input. Sorry, so we have input, we have output pair. Now, sorry, I wrote how I did physics. So, how is physics related to this particular thing? So, for your information, you may not know that majority of us as physicists, we are actually machine learning scientists. So now, what I mean by that is that when we are doing our physics practical at SS1 or SS2, so we take our measurement in the lab. So when we take our measurement, so we are asked to plot the graph. So you have your Y and X. So when you plot your graph, you draw your curve across your data point. Then you draw a straight line with which you can calculate your slope. So when you calculate your slope, you will notice that the curve that we have, for example, like this one here, it's not a straight line graph, but we assume in our physics practical that, okay, let us assume that this is a straight line. So we draw a straight line like a tangent across the curve, then we draw our slope. So when we draw the slope, then we write out our equation of straight line, y is equal to mx plus c. So y is one of the measurements, x is one of another measurement that we have taken. So now m is our slope, yc is the intercept that we have on the vertical axis. I'm happy to let you know that what you are doing in your physics practical is essentially what we call linear regression in machine learning. So it is essentially a physics method that have been brought into real life application. So where x is, the x that you measure in the lab is your input. So why is your output? For example, you want to find the relationship between period, when you talk about simple harmonic motion in our physics practical. So now we notice that our M, which is the slope, is what we call is what we call weights in machine learning. So why our C, which is the intercept, is what we call biases. So you can generate different weights and different biases for different situations. So some of us must have learned about pre-trained models. The essence of these pre-trained models is that you just see these models just have like a set of weight, a set of biases. So with this, you cannot predict new actions. So now, the only difference between machine learning and what we do as physicists in our physics practical is now that we now have different advanced models. Okay, for example, in physics practical, we could use linear equation of straight line, parabolic equation of parabolic curve. So now you now have different types of equations. So when we talk about SVM, logistic regression, these are essentially just model equations that are used to learn the trend between the set of input and the set of output. All right. So now when you come to supervised learning, you can have what you call classification. So in terms of classification, so this is more or less like application of what we must have done before. So what we just want to do now is we have set of input and output. So we want to know whether classes exist in the data set. Okay, we want to see how we can group them into different classes. For example, I can have data from patients suffering from cancer. So I can have data from patients that are just basically controls. So if I take their measurement, I can do machine learning program in such a way that can group these two people into two different groups, those who have this tumor and those who do not have. Now, supervised learning. So we see more of this that we can, for example, we can take like a dependent of age on tumor sizes. So how is tumor sizes, how do they change with age? So we see that, okay, above the curve and below the curve, we have different scenarios. So these scenarios can just be built into different classes. Okay. All right, unsupervised learning. In the case of unsupervised learning, so there are a few things that we can do. We don't have the freedom we have with supervised learning when it comes to unsupervised learning. So majority of things we can do, one of the most important things is what we call clustering. So clustering is like classification that is based on less information. So we do not have more information like in the case of supervised learning. So we want to have like clusters, different clusters and so on and so forth. So other examples of which we can do is what we call PCA, that's principal component analysis. And we have a few other methods that we can use when we do not have like a set of output. Yes. Now, like for example, in the case of unsupervised learning, so we can have genetic similarity data, so which we can analyze. So what we can do is, okay, can we cluster them? Okay, these ones belong to this group, this one belongs to this group. So we notice that the cluster now becomes our new inferred output. So this can help us in making important clinical decisions. All right. So in reinforcement learning, like I mentioned before, given a sequence of states and delayed rewards, output can actually be got. So example is like credit assignment problem, game playing that some of us are already familiar with. I know that some of us will play fever football, or I don't know the name of the other football game that we play. So when we play this game like once or twice, we notice that the game start learning from the way we play. So I make life difficult for you subsequently. So when you play today, you play tomorrow, the game must have learned from your data. So I make the game more hard for you in order to make you an expert in playing that game. So these games, most of them are based on reinforcement learning. So like we have another game, Robot in a Maze, balance a pole on your hand and so on and so forth. So these are very good examples of reinforcement learning. So Like I mentioned, this is an example that we can click on this YouTube page. It could show us a very good example of reinforcement learning. So agent environment interface. So we see that some of these things are not just in modeling or in coding. This particular agent environment is actually now being used in functional magnetic resonance imaging, in which I can actually perform an experiment on an animal to understand how their brain works. So now their brain the way they work cannot be used to understand how human brain work, because we know that majority, like 70% of our brain or even more, are currently not being used. So we do not know how much capacity we have, even as human beings. So we need to also understand ourselves as well. So now, machine learning in global health. So now the question we need to ask is that where are we as a continent? All right. So we had a meeting some years back, and in which different companies, AI companies, are working on a very detailed telemedicine database. So you have images from different parts of the world, from Europe, from the Americas, from different parts of the world, and unfortunately, they don't have data from Africa. So which is actually very sad. So which means that majority of the scanners that we are having that are AI-based will not include the data from Africa. So for example, when it comes to sickle cell diseases, we notice that this is a disease that is unique to Africa. So when we talk about Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, we actually have few in Africa. We have more in Western world. So when you have a scanner that comes with like a pre-trained model for Parkinson's disease, it's not useful for us per se. So, and when they bring this machine and there's no data, which one can we use to understand sickle cell disease that is unique to us? So what this means is that we have not been participating into the next level of development of medicine. So and we have to take this very serious. So because we are definitely lacking behind. So that is the first problem. The second problem is that majority of our data in the hospitals, like our MRI scans, are not actually currently being stored because there are no resources to store these scans. We have a lot of them. So I was interacting with a senior clinical person. So, and he mentioned that in most cases, they have to delete after like 1 week or 2 weeks. So these data are not supposed to be deleted. These are lots of wonderful resources that we can use to build the future of telemedicine and medical imaging in Africa. So we need to have like a policy change or like a database in which these images could be stored. So these images have patterns that could be used to predict the future. For your information, I was informed that there's currently a project going on in the UK. Maybe most of us must have heard about the UK Biobank project. So now they are taking random data, random imaging data, so to have like a prognosis. So in like 10 years time, 20 years time, how many of these patients have Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, or brain tumor? So that they will now retrospectively go back to the scans that they have taken 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So and check whether there were signs on those scans that actually predispose some of these patients to the disease they eventually got in the future. So you can now use this to predict those who are going to have this disease in the future using this experience. So which means that you can actually attack some of these disease condition as early as possible. So for example, like some of us, as we know, majority of our people do not go to the hospital until it's too late. So now if we have like a policy in which people go for random scan. Now, if we want to go for random scan, the scan are very costly. The economy is not good enough. So what are the ways in which we can actually overcome this problem? So now there's a good news for us. And the good news is this, that with machine learning and computation, AI and computational techniques, we can actually cover more ground as the continent. So we do not have the funding that will allow us to operate at the same level. We do not have the experience to operate at the same level. And we do not have the equipment to operate at the same level. But luckily for us, we have the brain, and with the computation, with computers, we can actually contribute computationally and bridge the gap computationally. So how can we use machine learning to bridge the gap between the developing world and the developed world? All right. So now, for example, machine learning in African hospitals, the use of machine learning and AI can be used to automate hospital tasks. And when we automate this, it could reduce the number of times the doctor had to attend to patients, the number of patients that had to be seen by nurses. So we can actually use AI like an assistant doctor, assistant nurse to automate tasks while they attend to the most important problems. So I think, additionally, we can actually reduce contact times for professionals as well. So in one of our presentations some years ago, we talked about how machine learning helped in the time when we had COVID. So you have health professionals who are putting all their effort and sacrificing their life for their patient to stay alive. So they also had to stay alive for us to remain alive. So in order for us to help both the patient and the health caregivers, we need to find ways in which we can incorporate machine learning and AI into our hospitals. Now, the first step is that we just need to take the leap of faith. So now, one point I would like to note is that our deficiency, that we do not have scanners, we do not have equipment, we do not have funding, can actually be like a springboard for us to develop method of surviving in difficult situations. Now, we may know that you may think that it's only us that we are lacking behind. Most of the challenges we are facing are being faced by a lot of countries in South America as well. They are being faced by a lot of countries in Asia. I can even tell you specifically that a lot of countries in Africa are doing better off than some countries in Asia. This is also true with a lot of countries in Eastern Europe. So we are not the only one that are having this kind of challenges. We can actually use our situation to provide leadership, to provide light at the end of the tunnel for other countries who have similar challenge with our own. So, and we need to start by doing this our way, okay? We can't get this. So what do? We need to do something. We need to start somewhere. So we see that the current economic situation is making us lose a lot of health professionals as well. A lot of doctors, nurses, and medical physicists are leaving to better countries. So we have few people remaining. And now the ones we had before are not enough for the patient. The patient health caregiver ratio has always been high. So the loss of this professional is making it worse. So now we need to find ways of overcoming this problem by having like a change of policy and apathy towards computational methods. I know it's not a replacement. I need us to note that it can never be a replacement for a doctor or a nurse or any other healthcare professionals, but it could be like an assistant. It could help to automate tasks. It could help to make life easier. So we don't need to do it big. We don't need to do it majestically. We need to start somewhere. We need to start small. So, and the earlier we start, I think the better for us. Machine learning and AI in medicine can actually provide job opportunity for our youth. We notice that a lot of our youth are already doing one form of computer programming or another, whether for good or evil. So, but we know that it shows to us that they are good in doing these things. So the youth can actually help in expanding the application of machine learning in medical settings, diagnosis and treatment, patient monitoring, data transfer here and there. So we know that there are a lot of policy had to change, but we just need to start somewhere. All right. So now, in conclusion, so in practice, Machine learning will help us to understand the domain, prior knowledge, and goals. So now this is good in terms of diagnosis. It's good for diagnosis, for prognosis, and for also patient monitoring after treatment. So for example, you can have like after we treat a patient, we can actually have like an app that is developed on their phone in which they can actually be monitoring their development or their improvement from home. So while they are monitoring this, most of us must have heard about IoT devices, that's Internet of Things. So we can have like Internet of Things programs that are developed to send the data directly from the phone to your doctor. So your doctor can actually be monitoring you from home. So you don't have to come to the hospital for everything, or else it's absolutely necessary. So we need data integration, selection, cleaning up, pre-processing. Like we mentioned before, our hospitals need new databases. So we need a very large databases. And for our information, I heard recently that some companies outside the country are already coming in from our data. So if they are coming in for our data, we also need to use the data as well. So if they come in for our data, they take our data, use it to produce an equipment or a scanner. So then when they bring the scanner back, we still have to buy it at an exorbitant price. So why don't we start by having like a very centralized database? So instead of deleting this data, we can dump this data there. Then our utans researchers can use machine learning to bring out the best in this data that we can start doing this on our own. So this will now allow us to have different models. We can have those that are based on gender. We can have those that are based on culture, especially the food that we eat, because we may not realize it, but our cultural food that we eat can actually have positivity or negativities in terms of our health. So in terms of making prediction or what leads to one disease or another, this machine learning model can actually help us in terms of interpreting the result. We can also consolidate and deploy some of this discovery, maybe on apps, on the website, for easy access. So I think these are areas that we actually need to work on to improve our contribution in terms of medical service delivery. So we need to start Finally, we need to start employing machine learning and AI in our hospital in any capacity, no matter how small. I'd like to appreciate the president of NAMP, Professor Efe Balogun, and the National Secretary, Dr. Yogo Sawade, and the entire NAMP team who organized this program. Thank you very much. I also want to appreciate my professor, who is our group, Professor Bamidele Awujoyogbe, and my students, Mr. Odeme Nicholas and Mr. Henry Sonny, who helped in putting some of these materials together. Thank you all. And I want to appreciate every one of you. Thank you for listening.